Hello, hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. I hope that you're having a great week so far. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is sight words. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to introduce a sight word, some big mistakes to avoid when you're teaching sight words, 3 key elements to include in your sight word instruction, and I'll also be going over my favorite resource to introduce sight words, my body spelling resource. And at the end, I'll also be giving away the bundle of 140 words, as well as 2 $10 TPT gift cards. So make sure you stay till the end. Now, before we get started, I'd love to know who's here with me. So let me know in the comments where you're from and what grade you teach. Hi, Rebecca. How are you? Now, if you're new to my page, I'm Brenda Tejeda, and I taught in the classroom for 17 years, mostly in kindergarten and first grade, but I did do a couple of years in third grade as well. And I just love the age group in K and 1. If you teach K and 1, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They love you. They love to learn. They make so much progress from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And you also know that sight words is a big component of our literacy instruction. So we know that it's important. And today I'm going to be answering questions about how to go about teaching it in a way that makes it stick and using strategies to help our students remember them. Okay, so I see a lot of people that teach first grade also. First grade, kindergarten, awesome, from all over. Thanks again for joining me. And let's get started with, I'm going to back up just a little bit to go over what sight words are. So sight words can be any words that you recognize by sight, and you don't have to sound them out to decode. So pretty much any word can be a sight word. Today, I'm going to be speaking about sight words that are also known as high-frequency words, and they're words that appear very commonly in children's text. So why are they important? Why are sight words important? Besides the fact that they appear in about 75% of children's books, they're also important because if kids have a strong sight word vocabulary, it helps them with fluency and it helps them with comprehension. So if kids don't have a large sight word vocabulary, it might take them a really long time to read a sentence if they're trying to sound out every word in the sentence. And then by the time they get to the end of the sentence, they may have forgotten what the beginning of the sentence was. Has that ever happened? So sight words, so when they are able to recognize sight words and read them with automaticity, that helps in their fluency, and it also helps them understand if they can remember. Okay, so how do we teach them? We know that they're important. How do we go about teaching them and making them stick so that kids remember them when they encounter them in text as well? Well, there are 2 mistakes I want to talk about today. And I've made them in the past. They might be familiar if you've made them too, so I want to share them with you. And one is teaching sight words in isolation. So you probably at some time in your life had flashcards and you drill and kill them with your students. And I'm not saying that you have to throw your flashcards away, but teaching just teaching sight words and introducing them with just a flashcard is not enough. So those are great and they have their place in review. When you're teaching a sight word, it's important that you have these 3 key elements in your instruction. So instead of just isolation, you want to show students the letters that make up the word. So they have to see the letters, they have to know what the letters are. They have to know the sounds that those letters are making or how to pronounce the word. And they have to know the meaning of the word. So kids have to understand what the word means in order for it to stick. And when you have those 3, let me make this a little bit bigger. When you have those 3 key elements, letters, sounds, and meaning, then it activates the brain and helps kids retain that information so that they don't forget easily. Now, even with those 3 elements, some kids aren't going to remember them, right? They might remember for a short term. So it's also important when you're I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about mistake number 2, which is probably even bigger. So, and I used to say this too, telling kids that sight words just don't follow the rules and having kids just memorize the whole word. For example, the word no, K-N-O-W, that's the word no. We just spell it K-N-O-W. It doesn't follow the rules, so we just have to memorize it and remember that. So In fact, I'm going to show you, I'm going to have a little demonstration here to show you why that's not the most effective way to learn sight words. Now, I know that you know reading and spelling and writing, so I can't use letters with you. Instead, I'm using numbers. This is the word tea, okay? I drank tea with milk, 9630246. That's how you spell the word tea, okay? Stick with me. Now, I used it in a sentence so you know what the word tea means. I drank tea with milk, with lemons. What do you like in your tea? Now, how do you spell tea? Now, chances are you probably forgot the number combination that represents the word tea. If you have a really good memory, you might remember them for a few minutes, but after that, since you just had to memorize it, you'll forget. It's kind of like a phone number. You know, if you get a phone number, you might remember it for a short term, but then tomorrow you're going to forget unless you really practice and study it well, right? But what if I tell you, now let's look at that number sequence again, that means T, and now I'm going to give you a code for that number sequence. So now counting back by threes represents the letter T and the sound T, right? And 246, or counting forward by twos, represents EA. Now that I broke the code a little bit, does it make a little bit more sense that why that number sequence would stand for the number T, for the word T? And if I were to use 246 at the beginning, counting forward by twos at the beginning, and flip those, I bet you can tell me what that word is, right? So you can read that that word is eat. And you could even, if I tell you M is M, you can probably tell me what that word says too, right? So before, when I asked you to just memorize the word, I gave you no reason for the word to be spelled that way, and it was much harder for you to remember that number sequence. But now that I gave you a code and I told you why those letters represent the word, then not only were you able to read the word, you were able to apply that rule to read a new word. And I bet if I asked you to spell the word beet using a B for B, then you would be able to write that word as well. So it's important to not ask kids to just memorize the word. Now, there are some sight words that don't follow the rules, but in fact, most sight words do follow the rules. The problem is that kids haven't learned those phonics rules before they encounter those words in text. So we just tell them that. You can tell the kids, this word is tricky because even though we recognize these parts of the word, this part of the word, you haven't learned that phonics rule yet, but when we do, that part won't trick us anymore. Okay, so 3 things to keep in mind. Remember, the letters that make up the word, the sounds that those letters make, and the meaning. Okay, now, even with that, it's still hard for a lot of kids to remember sight words. So to help them remember, we have to use repetition and we have to use multisensory methods. So let's talk about repetition. You might recall at the beginning of this session, I told you that I was going to give away my body spelling resource bundle, and it has a certain number of sight word presentations in it. Do you remember how many? Let me see. I know there's a little delay, but if you remember how many it has, you can just let me know. Well, if you didn't remember that it has 140 words, it's okay because I only told you once. But if I ask you how many key elements do kids need in order to really remember a sight word, I bet you can remember how many elements or how many things to include. 3, right? Can you tell me which things to include? You recall them? The letters, that's right, somebody said 141, you're right. The letters, the sound, and the meaning. Now, why was it so easy to remember that? Because I told you 3 key elements multiple times, and I also use multisensory methods. Not only did you hear it, but you also saw it, you saw my little chart, and I use my body to show you as well. So when we're teaching kids, we also want to make sure that we include repetition and we use multisensory methods to help them retain that information. So let's put all of this together. And yes, letter sounds meaning, Amy. Let's put all this together, and I'm going to show you how I would introduce the word first. Okay, now there are 2 ways. The first way I'm going to show you, All you need is the paper and marker. And if you're teaching remotely, you can share your screen with a PowerPoint or Microsoft, Google Slides, whatever you teach. I know that teaching virtually brings a lot of challenges, and I really feel for parents, teachers, students everywhere, but we can make this work. So I'm going to show you how I would teach the word first with just paper and a marker. Hopefully you can see. Let me turn this a little bit. And helps if I take off that. Okay. So today we're going to learn the word first. Can you say first? Okay. Here's how we spell first. F-I-R-S-T. First means like at the beginning of something. For example, I am first in line. That's the word first. Can you think of a sentence using the word first? And you might give them a couple of prompts. Maybe how do you get ready in the morning for school? First, right? So after the kids understand the word first, you can tell them, I'm going to read the word first. Watch as I point underneath the word and say the sounds in the word first. I want you to tell me if you recognize any letters that you know are making their sounds that we've learned. First. That's right. The F is saying F. R, we know that S says S, and T says T. Now I want you to tell me which letter is a little bit tricky in this word. Which letter is not making a sound that you know? Yeah, the I. That I is not saying I, like we know I to say, right? So let me show you something. When I is followed by R, it actually does make the sound Now we haven't learned that yet in kindergarten or first grade. So that part of this word is tricky, but we're not going to let that trick us, right? And then if you have like a little song or a tip to help them remember the word, this is when you can tell them. So I like to tell the kids, I like to be first. I like to be first, F-I-R-S-T. And you repeat that a couple of times so that it helps them just remember how to spell and how to read that word. And now you've taught them the parts of the word that they know, the part that's tricky for them, and then you're not expecting them to remember this from here on, but some kids, when they see that combination again, they will be able to remember that and apply it to new words. Now, after you do that, you might even draw a picture to help with comprehension. First, if you're first in line, that's the first one, and anything that you can do to help them remember. After you do that, you're going to want them to write it. Write the word either in a notebook. In my class, we had sight word notebooks or word study notebooks, and we would add them to our notebooks. But if you don't have a notebook, you can use student whiteboards, or you could even have them take out their hand notebook and finger pencils and have them practice writing the word. Make sure that they say each letter name as they're writing it too. So F-I, you can have them write it on their arm, on their lap, on the carpet. If they're at their desks, you can have them on their desk. The point is to bring that tactile component in it, which also helps them retain that information. Okay, so that's a lot to remember. I know it's a lot of steps to remember. So let me share my screen with you again. I'm going to show you my body spelling resource that I use to help me remember all these steps, because it's a lot to remember and you don't want to miss any steps. So this makes it easy. All the components that you need are in there. All right, so here's the word first. The next slide has the word in context. And here you can stop and ask the kids, can they come up with more sentences? Make sure that you clarify the meaning and that they all understand. And somebody's asking, were my sight word notebooks set up alphabetically? Yes. So at the back of our notebooks, we also had a word wall in our class, and they were set up alphabetically. All right, so after you do that, you can go over which parts do they recognize in the word that are saying the letter sounds that they know, and which part is tricky for now. And if you make a big deal out of, you're not going to let that I fool you, right? That also motivates them to practice and to try harder. All right, and then I also want to include movement as much as I can, because movement is proven to help kids retain information. Plus, it's engaging. So whenever, you probably know too, whenever you ask your kids to get up and participate, interact, walk around the classroom. That helps kids remember, and it keeps them engaged. So I ask them to point to the dots right from where they're sitting. Just pretend they're pointing and touching each dot as they say the letters, F-I-R-S-T, and then put their finger underneath the word and read the word again. A lot of repetition, a lot of movement. And then it's time for body spelling, which is their favorite. So we go through each slide and they stand up and make the letter with their bodies. And then we do the whole word again all together. What's the word? First, F-I-R-S-T. You might even call a student or two to the front of the class who wants to demonstrate it for the rest of the class. Now, after this slide is the skywrite. So again, another movement with the body. And for skywriting, we say finger pencils. They hold their arm up nice and straight. And I put the red dots there to make sure that they have correct letter formation. And again, we say each letter as we're writing it in the sky with our arms pointing and saying the letter. Of course, read it afterwards. Now, the slide after this is their absolute favorite. It's the Find It slide. So I know to get ready for this slide, I'm going to call some students up to the board. Now, if you're doing this remotely, I'll tell you how you can do this too. But I usually have this displayed on my smartboard, and I'll call 3 students up. One is going to stand at the beginning, and one will stand in the middle, one will stand at the end. And here's a little tip. They're going to find the 10 words that are spelled correctly on this slide before the time is up. A little tip is to give them each a different color marker so that you know which ones made a mistake. You don't even have to tell them, but you know for yourself which ones circled and made a mistake. So after 10 seconds, this slide comes up with the answers. So you'll automatically be able to see if they found all of them, and you can change the time too. And if they circled any that were not correct, you can make it a teaching moment. So for example, if they circled F-E-R-S-T, you can discuss what's the mistake, have them come up and correct them. After that, again, is writing. So you can do that in the notebook, on a whiteboard, or just some kind of tactile activity that you do. And finally, you end with repetition of the word. You can talk about the parts of the word that they know and they don't know, and spell it, read it again. Now, I also like to review the words. I like to review when we've learned 5 words, and I also like to do a cumulative review of everything that we've learned for the year. So I'll show you what that looks like, and this is also included in this bundle. It's an editable table, so you just have to type in the words that you want to review. Let's say that. Then you can copy and paste them into the other boxes, and just add a little element of fun. Kids love to make special voices, so they can come up. You can call them one at a time. You can have the whole class and make the voice of the characters shown. So the first time that they read the boxes, they can make a little baby voice, and they read it again with a robot voice, a monster voice. It has a granny voice, a little tiny mouse voice, a singing voice, my favorite, a bear voice, grandpa voice, and a whisper voice. So this is just a fun way to review all the words that you've learned that week or that year. All right, so going back. Oh, okay, let me see where I left. All right, so just to recap, remember the 3 key elements to include when you're teaching a word that's going to help these words stick and help students remember them are to show them the letters, excuse me, the letters that make up the word, the sounds or the pronunciation, and what each letter says in that word. Even if it's something that they don't know, you can tell them the rule, and so that they realize that it does follow a phonics rule. And then also the meaning of the word. And you want to make sure that you have lots of repetition, and try to include multi-sensory methods when you can. So have them make the words with their bodies, write using their finger pencils, and things like that. All right, so if you have not commented yet, if you have any questions, of course, ask your questions, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. Even if I don't do it live because we have a little delay, I'll come back and answer them. But if you haven't commented yet, go ahead and do that, because I'm about to pick my winners, and somebody will win the whole bundle of 140 words. Now, each PowerPoint is its own, each word is its own PowerPoint. Yeah, yes, Lisa, you can screenshot it and have it be an assignment. Or since this is actually saved, I was just about to say each word is its own PowerPoint. So you can definitely upload this into Google Classroom, the words that you are targeting for your kids to practice from home. Oh, somebody, I forgot, I'm sorry. How do you do it virtually? So I use this with my daughter at home, and I don't want her, we don't have a smart board for her to write on. So what she does is just use her finger to circle the words. And I also, once we have it on our big TV screen, if you're doing this, if kids are doing this from home, you can give them Post-its and they can put Post-its where the words are. That's another way that we did it. And if you're in class, I forgot to mention, so that the kids are sitting down at the Find It slide, so they're not just sitting down and kind of waiting for for the three kids to circle all the words. You can tell them to sky circle, so they could sit quietly right from where they are and kind of go like this and make circles, and they kind of feel like they're participating in that slide too. All right, so I am going to, you're welcome, Rebecca. I'm so glad that it helps you understand it a little bit better. Yes, Amy, the movement opportunities are just so important, especially in K1, where you kind of have to keep them engaged in order to keep their attention, right? All right, so let's see. I'm going to pick one person for the body spelling bundle, and then two people each will get a $10 TPT gift card. And if you don't know, the TPT is having their last back to school sale today, which ends in just a couple of hours. And everything in my store is 25% off. If you want the full discount, I think it's BTS Boost 20. So I'm going to leave a link to that at the end. Okay, I'm going to try to pick without even looking. Let me see, whoever I land on, and let me edit. Hold on one second. I want to edit the PowerPoint so I can display the winning names. Okay, I have one. Let me scroll. Okay, here's one. And almost done. Let's see. I need one more winner. And that's going to be, okay. Okay, and the winners, oops, that didn't work. Okay, so the winners are Kelly Long, you won the body spelling bundle. Heidi Schneider and Ty DeCarmo, you won the $10 TPT gift card. So make sure that you email me after, and I will send those right to you. I also will put the link to the body spelling bundle if you want to take a look at it. And here is my contact. Here is my contact information. If you have any questions at all, you want to contact me, Brenda@brendatejeda.com. And my shop is brendatejeda.com. I also have a blog with more information and teacher tips at tejedastats.com. And I'd love, if you teach kindergarten and first grade, I'd love for you to join our Facebook group. If you want to ask questions or collaborate with other kindergarten and first grade teachers, you can just look at the top of my page and click there. So let's see if I have any questions. Will this video be saved to your Facebook page? Yes. So I'm pretty sure, this is only, I think, my second time going live, but I'm pretty sure once I hit end, it will be saved. Fingers crossed. All right. I don't see any more questions now. So, but I will come back after. And if there are any more questions, I will answer those, or feel free to email me. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that it was helpful for you. Have a good night.